Today on Sports Central, we'll be going over 5 reasons why the Minnesota Golden Gophers will go on to making the college football playoff in the 2020-21 season. And as you know, this is a team that was one of the best in the Big Ten last season. They really surprised a lot of people. They pretty much came out of nowhere. But nonetheless, we're going to be going over 5 reasons why they'll take that next step in the 2020 season and how they're going to make the college football playoff. But once again, these 5 reasons will be in no particular order. With that being said, let's look at your number 1 reason, and that's going to be the receiving core for Minnesota. They only lose one receiver from 2019, and Tyler Johnson, and they returned their entire receiving core outside of that. They actually had 2 major wide receivers last season, and one of them was Tyler Johnson. Once again, he's going to be gone, but they do return Rashad Bateman, which he had over 1,200 yards last season with 11 touchdowns. I mean, both these receivers were absolutely insane last season. They combined for over 2,500 yards with a decent 24 touchdowns. So certainly for Minnesota, I mean, this receiving core is going to be a huge bright spot still going into 2020. They return their second and third wide receivers in Rashad Bateman and Chris Ottman. Both of those receivers combined for more than 1,500 yards last season. And they also landed their 4-star recruit, Daniel Jackson. He'll be coming into this program next season, or this team, is what I could say. But yeah, certainly this receiving core is bringing in a lot of talent. They got a lot of talent right now. And so, yeah, I certainly think Minnesota is going to be really good, especially on the offensive side. Moving on to number 2, it's going to be Tanner Morgan, their quarterback. He led the Big Ten in passing yards per attempt in 2019. And, I mean, he was much better than just that. He put up over 3,200 passing yards last season, which that's probably one of the best stats in the nation, actually. He was a top 3 quarterback in the Big Ten in 2019, no doubt on that either. He returns 2 of his top 3 receivers once again, and also as a 4-star recruit. Once again, we talked about Rashad Bateman and Chris Ottman, as well as their 4-star recruit. So yeah, this receiving core is looking great, and that's going to be a huge plus for Tanner Morgan as well. I mean, when you got good receivers, it's going to be a huge help to the quarterback. And also, I mean, they got a great offensive line, but we'll go over that in a sec. But once again, his 2019 stats: 3,200 yards with 30 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. And it would not surprise me a single bit to see Tanner Morgan quite possibly become one of the best, probably a top 2 quarterback in the Big Ten next season. I mean, I don't think he'll beat out Justin Fields, but yeah, he certainly will beat out a lot of other quarterbacks, no doubt on that in my mind. Moving on to number 3, it's going to be the linebacking core for Minnesota. They only lose one linebacker from 2019 and Thomas Barber. And this defense held most teams to 20 or below points in almost the entire 2019 season. So certainly this defense is one of the best in the Big Ten, probably a top 3 or 4. And yeah, I mean, they also bring in a 4-star linebacker with Tavion Brown. So yeah, he's going to be a notable name to watch out for as well. So yeah, it's really this linebacking core. When you only have 1 or 2 losses in a certain position, that's going to be huge heading into the next season. And for Minnesota and the defensive side, it's definitely going to be the linebacking core for them. I expect this to be a huge bright spot, especially on their defense. Moving on to number 4, we got the offensive line. I just talked about them a couple minutes ago. They returned their entire offensive line going into 2020, which is huge. Typically, you'll see 1 to 2, maybe even 3 losses on most offensive lines. But this Minnesota team is one of, I think, 2 or 3 teams that return their entire offensive line. That's going to be huge going into 2020. They had a top 3 offensive line in the Big Ten last season as well. As you know, I mean, they were right up there with Wisconsin and Iowa as far as offensive lines go. So yeah, certainly for Minnesota, this team has got a lot of talent, a lot of potential, especially on the offensive line heading into 2020. And maybe we'll have the best O-line in the Big Ten next season. Honestly, I mean, Iowa's losing a ton on the offensive line. Wisconsin still looks to be pretty good, but yeah, definitely for Minnesota, they're going to be really good, especially in this position next season. And nonetheless, they also bring in 4 3-star offensive lineman recruits. So I know there are 3 stars, but I'm sure that you'll get 1 or 2 really good players out of those 4 3-stars. So yeah, I certainly think for Minnesota, the offensive line is going to be huge. And honestly, this entire thing just sets up great for Tanner Morgan. I mean, when you got a good offensive line, good receivers, really Tanner Morgan is set to make a huge run at being one of the best quarterbacks, or if not, probably the best quarterback in the Big Ten next season. He could be a big surprise player. Watch out for him. I'm not saying that he's going to be Joe Burrow style, but he definitely could be up there. I could see him getting 4,000 yards next season. I mean, it's definitely possible. But yeah, nonetheless, moving on to number 5, and your final reason, it's going to be PJ Fleck. You can't keep him off of this list. He's been with Minnesota for 3 seasons, and he has turned around this team in a very short time frame. Of course, if you remember back in 2017, this team actually missed a bowl game. I believe that was his first year with Minnesota, if I'm correct. And so yeah, this is going to be his 4th season, I believe, with Minnesota. He led this team to his 7th ranking last season, and I expect that to continue. I think Minnesota will be a top 10 team at some points next season, no doubt on that. But yeah, 2019 was the team's first 11-win season since 1904. That is over a century, and this is actually their first 10+ win season, I believe, since 2003. So yeah, it's been quite a while since Minnesota's been a big nationally relevant team. That's what they were last season. I mean, Minnesota was a great team last season, and I expect them to definitely continue with that going into 2020. Watch out for Minnesota, in my opinion. I mean, no one's really even talking about them, but they could legit be a national contender next season, in my opinion. And when you got as much talent as they're returning, I mean, you do lose a little bit on the defense. They do lose, I believe, 5 or 6 starters on this defense, but otherwise, this offense is looking great. They definitely will have one of the best offenses in the Big Ten. And nonetheless, that wraps up our 5 reasons why Minnesota would make the college football playoff in the 2020-21 season. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to slap a like on, subscribe as well. Really helps out the channel, and I really appreciate that. Well, once again, thank you all for watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central, and I will see you all later.